Poor widow fled with her children to an old house on the hill until she heard footsteps behind her. After her husband passed away, the widow's life slowly fell apart in ways she never imagined. He had not been sick for long, and his death came suddenly, leaving her shocked and unprepared. One day he was laughing with the children, and the next day his side of the bed was empty. The house felt silent, as if even the walls were confused by his absence. She tried to stay strong for her children, but inside her heart felt heavy every moment. At first, people showed sympathy. Neighbors came to offer kind words, and relatives visited with sad faces. But as days turned into weeks, that care faded. Bills began to pile up on the small table near the window. Rent was due, school fees needed to be paid, and food costs kept rising. Her husband had been the main earner, and without him, money became a constant worry. She took small jobs where she could, sewing clothes and cleaning houses, but it was never enough. Some relatives who once smiled at her now avoided her. Others suggested she should send her children away to live with different family members. Hearing that broke her heart. Her children were all she had left, and she could not imagine being separated from them. Every night after the children fell asleep, she sat quietly and cried, making sure no one heard her. The rented room they lived in was small and crowded. The walls were thin, and voices from outside came through easily. Over time, the landlord became impatient. He wanted his money on time and showed little understanding for her situation. One evening, he came to the door and spoke harshly, reminding her of unpaid rent. The children listened silently from the corner, their eyes full of fear. That night, she realized staying there was no longer safe for them. She remembered an old house on a hill at the edge of town. It had once belonged to a distant family connection of her husband. Long ago, her husband had mentioned it, saying it was empty and forgotten. No one had lived there for years. The house was old, damaged, and far from people, but it was still a roof. She did not know if she had the right to stay there, but she felt she had no other choice. After thinking for many nights, she made a difficult decision. She would leave quietly before anyone could stop her or judge her. She packed only what was necessary: a few clothes, some kitchen items, old photographs, and her children's school books. Everything else was left behind. She told the children they were going on a journey to a new place where they could be safe. Early one morning, before the sun rose, they left. The streets were empty and quiet. She held her youngest child's hand tightly, afraid he might slip or get lost. The older children carried small bags and walked silently, sensing the seriousness of the moment. With every step away from the town, her heart beat faster. Fear followed her, but hope walked beside it. The road leading to the hill was long and rough. The children grew tired, but she encouraged them gently. She told them stories about how life could change, about how hard times do not last forever. She tried to sound confident, even though she herself was unsure. As they climbed higher, the town slowly disappeared behind them. When they finally reached the house, she stood still for a moment. The building looked worse than she remembered. The paint was peeling, windows were broken, and weeds covered the yard. The door made a loud sound when she pushed it open. Dust filled the air, making them cough. The children looked at her with worried faces, silently asking if this was really going to be their new home. She forced a small smile and told them it would be okay. Inside, the house was dark and cold. Cobwebs hung from the corners, and the floor was covered in dirt. Still, it had walls, a roof, and space to rest. That was more than they had at that moment. She opened the windows to let light and air inside. Slowly, the house began to feel a little less frightening. That first day, she worked without stopping. She cleaned as much as she could, using water she had carried with her. The children helped by picking up trash and sweeping the floor. By evening, they were all exhausted. They sat together on the floor, sharing a simple meal. The silence of the hill surrounded them, broken only by the sound of wind. As night fell, fear returned. The house made unfamiliar noises. Wood cracked and the wind moved through broken windows. The children huddled close to her, unable to sleep. She held them tightly, whispering comforting words. Inside, she prayed for strength. She reminded herself that she had survived worse days and that this was only another challenge. Lying there in the darkness, she thought about her husband. She wondered what he would say if he could see them now. She imagined him telling her she was doing the right thing, that protecting their children mattered more than anything else. That thought gave her a small sense of peace. Though the future was uncertain, she promised herself one thing. No matter how hard life became, she would not give up. This old house on the hill was not just a place to hide. It was a chance to start again. As sleep slowly took over, she believed that somewhere ahead, a better life was waiting for them, even if she could not yet see it. And while the night seemed calm, the hill held many secrets. Unseen, unheard, something else existed in the quiet around the house, something she would soon become aware of, though for now she rested, unaware that her journey had only just begun. Morning came slowly on the hill. Pale light entered through the broken windows, touching the dusty floor and the tired faces of the widow and her children. She woke up before the children, her body aching from sleeping on the hard ground. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then she remembered everything and her heart felt heavy again. Still, she took a deep breath and stood up quietly so she would not wake the children too soon. She stepped outside and looked around. The air was fresh and cool. From the hill she could see trees, empty land, and a narrow path leading down toward the town. The house stood alone, surrounded by tall grass and silence. It felt far away from people, problems, and noise. That gave her both comfort and fear. Comfort because no one could disturb them easily. Fear because if something went wrong, no one would hear them. When the children woke up, they looked confused and scared again. The youngest asked if they were going back home. She knelt beside him and gently told him this was their home now. She promised him they would make it better together. Though her voice was calm, inside she felt unsure. Still, she smiled, knowing her children needed to see hope on her face. That day, she decided to clean more seriously. She believed that if the house looked better, their hearts would feel lighter too. She sent the children outside to play nearby where she could see them. With an old cloth and water from a nearby hand pump, she wiped the floor and walls. Dust filled the air, making her cough, but she did not stop. Every corner she cleaned felt like a small victory. The children found sticks and stones and began making games. Their laughter, though soft, brought warmth to the cold space around the house. Hearing them laugh reminded her why she had come here. No matter how hard life became, their smiles were worth everything. As the days passed, a simple routine began to form. Every morning, she cleaned, cooked, and looked for small ways to improve their situation. She planted a few seeds she had carried with her, hoping they would grow into vegetables one day. The children helped by fetching water and collecting dry wood for cooking. Life was hard, but slowly they adjusted. At night, however, fear returned. The silence of the hill was different from the town. There were no voices, no traffic sounds, only wind and distant animal noises. The house often made strange sounds. The children clung to her when they heard them. She told them it was only the house settling or the wind playing tricks. Even though she said those words, she too felt uneasy. One afternoon, while hanging clothes outside, she noticed something unusual. There were footprints in the dirt near the back of the house. At first, she thought they were her own or the children's, but when she looked closer, they seemed larger. Her heart beat faster. She looked around quickly, but no one was there. The hill stood silent as if nothing had happened. She tried to calm herself. Maybe an animal had passed by. Maybe someone had walked by earlier. She told herself not to imagine things. Still, she felt watched, even though she saw no one. That night she locked the door carefully and kept the children close. Days went by, and she noticed the footprints again, this time near the water area. Sometimes they appeared fresh, as if someone had been there recently. Fear slowly grew inside her, but she did not tell the children. She did not want them to feel scared in a place that was already unfamiliar. She became more careful. She stopped going far alone and made sure the children stayed close. She listened closely to every sound, even during the day. Her sleep became lighter, waking at the smallest noise. Though she tried to stay strong, worry never left her mind. One evening, while cooking, she thought she heard a sound behind the house. It was soft, like footsteps moving slowly. She froze, holding her breath. The sound stopped. She waited for a long moment before continuing. Her hands shook, but she forced herself to stay calm. She reminded herself that fear could make ordinary sounds feel dangerous. Despite the fear, she did not give up. She knew she had no other place to go. Returning to town would mean facing people who had turned away from her. This house, as lonely as it was, still gave her freedom and dignity. The children slowly began to feel more comfortable. They explored the area, found small animals, and even made friends with birds that visited every morning. Seeing their curiosity return gave her strength. She realized children could adapt faster than adults, even in difficult situations. One day, while cleaning the yard, she found an old broken bench. With effort, she repaired it enough to sit on. In the evening, she sat there watching the sunset, thinking about her life. She missed her husband deeply. She wished he were there to guide her, to share the burden. But she knew she had to walk this path alone now. As the sun disappeared and darkness covered the hill, the familiar fear returned. The house seemed quieter than usual, as if holding its breath. She gathered the children inside early. They ate quietly, sensing her tension. She told them a story to distract them, her voice soft and steady. That night, as the children slept, she stayed awake longer than usual. The moonlight entered through the window, creating shadows on the walls. She listened carefully. Then she heard it again. Footsteps. Clearer this time, slow and careful, as if someone was trying not to be heard. Her heart raced. She sat up, holding her breath. The footsteps moved closer, then stopped. She felt fear wrap around her like a cold blanket. She looked at her sleeping children and knew she had to stay strong. Whatever was out there, she would face it for them. She waited, but nothing happened. The footsteps faded away into the night. Exhausted, she finally lay down, though sleep did not come easily. Questions filled her mind. Who could it be? Why were they there? Were they watching them? As the night passed, one thing became clear in her heart. This place was not as empty as she once thought. Someone else was connected to this house and this hill. And soon she would have to face that truth, whether she was ready or not. The next morning, the widow woke up with heavy eyes. She had barely slept. Every small sound during the night had made her heart jump. When the sun finally rose, she felt some relief, but fear still stayed inside her. She looked at her children sleeping beside her. Their faces were calm, unaware of the worry she carried for them. She gently brushed their hair and promised herself again that she would protect them, no matter what. When the children woke up, they noticed her tired face. The oldest asked if she was feeling sick. She smiled softly and said she was only a little tired. She did not want to tell them about the footsteps. She believed fear grows faster when spoken aloud. Instead, she encouraged them to eat breakfast and stay close to the house that day. She tried to continue with her daily work, but her mind was not at peace. While sweeping the floor, she kept looking toward the door. While cooking, she listened carefully to every sound outside. Even the wind made her stop and hold her breath. The hill felt different now. It was no longer just quiet, it felt watchful. Later in the day, she needed to collect water. Normally, she went alone while the children stayed near the house. This time, she asked them to come with her. The children were surprised, but they followed her without questions. As they walked, she kept looking behind her, her eyes scanning the path. Nothing seemed unusual, yet her heart refused to calm down. When they returned, she noticed something again. Near the side of the house, the ground looked disturbed, as if someone had recently walked there. The footprints were faint but clear enough to see. She stopped walking. Her breath became shallow. The children noticed her sudden pause and asked what was wrong. She quickly told them it was nothing and guided them inside. That evening, she locked the door earlier than usual. She closed the windows tightly and covered broken spaces with old cloth. The house felt smaller, but she preferred that over feeling exposed. She cooked quietly, her movements slow and careful. The children sensed the change in her behavior. They stayed close, speaking softly, as if the house itself could hear them. After dinner, she told the children to lie down early. She sat beside them and told them stories from their past, about their father and happy days. She wanted to keep their minds peaceful. Slowly, one by one, they fell asleep. She remained awake, sitting near the door, listening. The night grew deeper. The moon climbed higher in the sky, lighting the hill in pale silver. Shadows stretched across the ground outside. The widow held her breath, her ears sharp. For a long time there was nothing. She began to wonder if fear had taken control of her thoughts. Then she heard it, footsteps. This time they were clearer than before, slow, careful. They came from behind the house, moving along the wall. Her heart pounded so loudly she felt it might wake the children. She stood up slowly, her legs shaking. She placed herself between the door and the sleeping children. The footsteps stopped. She waited. Seconds felt like hours. She did not move. Her mind raced with questions. Who could it be? Why were they coming every night? What did they want? Suddenly, a small sound came from outside, like someone stepping on dry leaves. Her hands began to tremble. She wanted to call out, but fear held her voice. She stayed silent, hoping whoever it was would leave. After a while, the sounds faded. The footsteps moved away, slowly disappearing into the night. She waited a long time before sitting down again. Her body felt weak, as if all strength had drained from her. That night she did not sleep at all. When morning came, she felt exhausted, but she forced herself to stay strong. The children woke up cheerful, unaware of what had happened. She watched them closely, thinking about what to do next. Leaving the house crossed her mind, but she had nowhere else to go. The town was not an option. This hill was still her only shelter. She decided to be more alert during the day. She cleaned near the house so she would not have to go far. She asked the children to stay within her sight. She tried to act normal, but inside she felt tense, like a rope pulled too tight. In the afternoon, she noticed something else. A small pile of firewood had appeared near the side of the house. She froze when she saw it. She was sure it had not been there before. Her heart raced again. Someone had been there during the day too. Fear slowly mixed with confusion. If someone meant harm, why leave firewood? Why stay hidden? The questions made her head ache. She did not touch the wood. She simply stared at it for a long time, then went back inside. That night she stayed awake again. She listened carefully, but the footsteps did not return. Still, sleep avoided her. Days passed like this. Some nights were quiet. Other nights she heard movement, soft and distant. Never close enough to see anyone, never far enough to forget. The fear became part of her daily life. She learned to live with it, but it never truly left. The children began to notice her worry. They asked why she locked the door so early, why she looked outside so often. She gently told them she was just being careful. She reminded them not to wander far and always stay together. One evening, while the children were playing near the house, she heard a noise again. This time it was during the day. She turned quickly, her heart racing. But again, there was no one, only silence and wind. That night she made a decision. She could no longer live in fear without knowing the truth. Whoever was coming was connected to this house and this hill. Running away would not solve anything. She needed answers. As she lay beside her children, she whispered a quiet prayer. She asked for courage, not just for herself, but for her children. Whatever was waiting for her, she knew she would have to face it soon. Outside, the hill stood silent under the moonlight. Somewhere nearby, unseen footsteps paused, as if waiting for the right moment. And deep in her heart, the widow felt that the truth was closer than ever. The next morning, the widow woke up with a strange feeling. It was not only fear anymore. It was curiosity mixed with a quiet strength she did not know she still had. After many nights of worry, something inside her had changed. She was tired of hiding and guessing. She knew she could not protect her children properly unless she understood what was happening around them. She prepared breakfast as usual, though her hands moved slowly. The children noticed she was quieter than before. After they ate, she asked them to stay close to the house and not go far that day. She told them she had some work to do nearby. They agreed and began playing where she could see them clearly. She spent the morning cleaning the yard, but her eyes kept moving toward the trees and the path behind the house. Every sound made her pause. The wind moved the grass, birds flew in and out of the branches, but there was no sign of any person. Still, she felt she was not alone. By afternoon, the sun was warm and the hill looked peaceful. She began to think maybe she had imagined everything. But then she remembered the footsteps, the footprints, and the firewood. Those were real. Someone had been there. As the sun slowly moved lower, she made a decision. That evening, she would not hide. She would stay awake and face whatever came, even if fear shook her heart. She owed that much to herself and her children. When night arrived, she prepared the children for sleep earlier than usual. She told them a gentle story and kissed their foreheads. Once they were asleep, she sat near the door holding a small lantern. Her hands trembled slightly, but her mind was clear. The house was quiet. Too quiet, time passed slowly. The lantern light flickered, casting soft shadows on the walls. She listened to her own breathing. Then, just like before, she heard it. Footsteps. They were slow and careful, coming from the side of the house. Her heart began to race, but she did not freeze this time. She stood up quietly and moved toward the door. Every step felt heavy, but she kept going. The footsteps stopped again, just outside. She took a deep breath and spoke, her voice shaking but firm. She asked who was there and why they kept coming. Her words echoed softly in the night. For a moment there was no answer, only silence. Then she heard a weak voice. It was old and tired, filled with hesitation. The voice said it did not mean to scare her. It said it had been watching from a distance, afraid to be seen. The widow's fear did not disappear, but it softened slightly. The voice did not sound dangerous. It sounded lonely. She slowly opened the door, keeping the lantern raised. The light revealed an elderly man standing a short distance away. He looked thin and weak. His clothes were old and worn, and his face showed years of hardship. He held his hands low, showing he meant no harm. The widow stayed still, her body tense. She asked him why he was there and what he wanted. The old man lowered his head and began to speak. He said he once worked as a caretaker for the house many years ago. When the family left, he stayed nearby, having nowhere else to go. Over time, the house became his only connection to the past. He lived quietly in a small shelter hidden among the trees. When he saw the widow and her children arrive, he became afraid. He did not want to scare them, but he also did not want to lose the only place that felt familiar to him. He admitted that he had walked around the house at night, checking if they were safe. The firewood, he said, was left to help them, not to frighten them. He said he never meant to cause fear, but he did not know how to approach them without being misunderstood. As he spoke, the widow listened carefully. She watched his body language, his eyes, his voice. Slowly, her fear turned into understanding. She realized he was not a threat. He was just another soul struggling to survive, much like herself. Still, she did not let her guard down completely. She told him that his actions had frightened her and her children. She explained how hard life already was for them. The old man nodded, his eyes filled with regret. He apologized again and again, saying he should have spoken sooner. They stood there for a long moment, the night air cool around them. Finally, she made a choice. She told him that if he truly meant no harm, he must never come near the house at night again. If he wanted to help, it should be done openly and during the day. The old man agreed immediately. He said he would respect her rules. He thanked her for listening instead of chasing him away. She watched as he slowly stepped back into the shadows. When he was gone, she closed the door and leaned against it, her body shaking. The fear that had lived inside her for so long finally began to loosen its grip. That night, she slept better than she had in many days. The next morning, she told the children that someone had been around the house, but that there was no danger. She did not share every detail, but she reassured them that they were safe. The children trusted her and returned to their play. Later that day, the old man appeared again, this time in daylight. He stayed at a distance and waited until she noticed him. She watched him carefully as he pointed to broken parts of the house and asked if he could help repair them. She hesitated, then nodded. Over the following days, he helped fix the fence, clear the yard, and repair the broken door. He worked quietly and respectfully. The children watched him from afar at first, unsure. Slowly, as they saw his gentle behavior, their fear faded. The widow felt something change inside her. The house no longer felt watched. It felt protected. She still remained careful, but she no longer felt alone. The hill, once filled with fear, now felt calmer. She realized that sometimes fear is born not from danger, but from silence and misunderstanding. As the sun set one evening, she stood outside the house and looked around. The old house on the hill was no longer just a hiding place. It was becoming something else, a place of healing. Yet deep inside, she knew this was not the end. Life would still test her, but now she had learned an important truth. Courage does not always mean fighting. Sometimes it means facing fear and choosing understanding instead. And for the first time since arriving on the hill, she felt ready for whatever came next. Morning light filled the old house on the hill in a way it never had before. The widow woke up feeling calmer than she could remember. The fear that once lived in her chest had slowly softened. It did not disappear completely, but it no longer controlled her every thought. She sat up quietly and watched her children sleeping. Their faces looked peaceful, and that alone made her heart feel lighter. She stepped outside and breathed in the fresh air. The hill was quiet, but now the silence felt gentle instead of threatening. Birds moved through the trees, and the wind brushed the grass softly. For the first time since arriving there, she felt like the hill accepted them. As the days passed, life slowly began to change. The old man continued to help, always during the daytime, always keeping a respectful distance. He repaired broken wooden steps, fixed holes in the roof, and helped strengthen the door. He never entered the house unless she invited him. This built trust little by little. The children were curious about him at first. They watched from afar, whispering to each other. Over time, they noticed his gentle nature. He spoke softly, smiled kindly, and never raised his voice. One day, the youngest child waved at him. The old man smiled and waved back. That small moment felt like a bridge forming between fear and comfort. The widow kept her eyes open, always careful, but she no longer felt alone. She realized that strength did not always mean doing everything by herself. Sometimes, strength meant allowing safe help to exist. The house itself began to change. With every repair, it felt warmer. The broken windows were covered, the door closed properly, and the yard became cleaner. She planted more seeds, and small green leaves began to appear. Each new leaf felt like proof that life could grow again, even after loss. The children returned to their studies. She taught them at home using old books. In the evenings, they sat together and talked, laughed, and shared stories. Slowly, joy returned in small pieces. One afternoon, as she sat on the repaired bench watching the children play, she thought about her journey. She remembered the fear of leaving the town, the long walk to the hill, and the lonely nights filled with worry. She realized how far she had come, not just in distance but in courage. The old man sat nearby, resting after work. She asked him about his life. He spoke slowly, sharing stories of his past, of family he had lost, and of years spent alone. Listening to him, she saw her own pain reflected in his words. They were different people, but their struggles felt similar. She understood then that the hill had brought them together for a reason. Both had been searching for safety, for belonging, for a place to breathe without fear. As weeks turned into months, the widow found small ways to earn money again. She grew vegetables and sold them in the nearby market. It was not much, but it was enough to survive. People began to recognize her. They saw her as hardworking and honest, not just as a widow. The children grew stronger too. Their laughter became louder, their steps more confident. The hill that once scared them now felt like a place of freedom. They ran freely, played games, and explored nature without fear. At night, the widow slept better. The footsteps no longer came. The house felt safe. The lantern stayed off most nights, replaced by peaceful darkness. One evening, as the sun set behind the hill, she sat quietly and thought about her husband. Tears filled her eyes, but they were gentle tears, not heavy ones. She felt his presence in her strength, in her choices, in the way she protected their children. She whispered a quiet thank you, knowing she had honored his memory by surviving. The old man prepared to leave one day. He told her he had found a small place nearby where he could stay permanently. He thanked her for trusting him when she had every reason not to. She thanked him too for helping turn fear into safety. When he walked away, she did not feel abandoned. She felt grateful. That night she gathered her children and told them how proud she was of them. She told them that life would not always be easy, but they were stronger than they knew. The children hugged her tightly, feeling safe in her arms. The house on the hill stood quietly under the stars. It was no longer just an old building. It was a symbol of survival, courage, and new beginnings. The widow looked around and smiled softly. She knew challenges would still come. Life always brings them, but now she was ready. She had faced fear, chosen kindness, and built a future from nothing. The hill, once filled with shadows, now held light. And as the night passed peacefully, she knew that no footsteps would follow her anymore. Only hope walked beside her now, steady and strong, guiding her forward into a life she had rebuilt with her own hands.